My guest at this time is Cleta Mitchell. She's a Washington-based attorney in the firm of Foley and Lardner. You may remember our conversations with her as she represented conservative organizations harassed by the IRS as they applied for nonprofit status. She joins us now to discuss the political firestorm over Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, as there are now two women accusing him of sexual misconduct in the early 1980s, but neither accuser can find anyone to corroborate their stories, and the second accuser actually had plenty of doubts as recently as a week ago. So where does this leave us politically, legally, and culturally? And Cleta, thanks for a few minutes of your time today. We appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here, happy to talk about this.
We keep hearing supporters of the accusers calling their allegations credible. As an experienced attorney, what is the threshold for credibility, and do these allegations meet that threshold?
Well, look, I mean, different standards depending on the venue or the forum. Neither of these rise to the level of anything that was actionable. Neither of them filed any actions, and they don't really remember. Neither of these people remember much about anything other than they have been able to find Democratic activist attorneys who are trotting them out as a means of, as a desperation tactic, in my view, but as a means of literally assassinating the character of this fine judge. And I frankly find it incredible that and not credible. And the problem here is that both of these accusers are alleging things that are unproven and essentially unprovable and have no witnesses. Neither of them have anyone who has risen to say, yes, I was there and I saw the same thing. So, you know, as I say, this is unproven and unprovable, and certainly they've offered nothing in the way of substantiation. And I think that this is just desperation on the part of partisan Democrats who never had any intention of supporting Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation in the first place, who are angry because all these years later they weren't able to stop Clarence Thomas's confirmation with their Anita Hill concocted story. And so I frankly just think that they're just going to keep doubling down until he's finally confirmed, and they may not stop then. You notice they've not stopped attacking our president, even though he's been duly elected almost 2 years ago. So I think that's what's going on here, unfortunately.
Cleta, the legal community, of course, is filled with cases where one person is alleging something, the other person denies it, and it might come down without a lot of other evidence to who's more credible. And I know this process that's going to happen before the Senate Judiciary Committee is more political than legal, but how should lawmakers or anyone else sift through the testimonies this week to determine who's more likely to be telling the truth?
Well, I think you start with the fact that there's not a single Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee who is willing to support Brett Kavanaugh. And none of them, there's not one of them who has said that they would be willing to even be open to supporting Brett Kavanaugh. So let's start with that. This is not like a jury where supposedly the judge makes sure that all the people on the panel are impartial. These people aren't impartial. Every one of them is against Brett Kavanaugh. The Republicans likewise have said they support him. So I don't think it's going to change any minds on Thursday. And it's been a wrestling match by Senator Grassley to try to get this woman to, after she made these allegations, to actually come and own up to what she's alleging and to face the accused, and to do so in a way that is consistent with some basic principles of due process. You know, her lawyers wanted him to go first. Well, and then they wanted to dictate who could question her. They don't want her to be cross-examined properly. Anyway, there's just too much going on, and it's being promoted by partisan Democratic attorneys. I noticed that Tammy Baldwin, who's the senator from Wisconsin, who has refused to meet with Brett Kavanaugh, but she did find time to organize a fundraiser with the lawyers for this woman from California, and then canceled it after the word got out that she was having a fundraiser with these two lawyers. So, you know, Jane Mayer, who wrote the New Yorker article, is a known left-wing journalist. She's really not a journalist. She does hit jobs on conservatives. She's done many of those. So she's not a credible journalist. And the lawyer for this latest person is Michael Avenatti of Stormy Daniels fame. So you tell me that these people are serious and credible. I just don't buy it.
A couple minutes left here with Cleta Mitchell, longtime Washington-based attorney, a partner in the firm of Foley and Lardner. And one big picture, one closer to home here for you, Cleta. First of all, you've been concerned for a while now about where this Me Too movement might be headed even before these allegations. So what are your thoughts now about where the movement seems to be headed?
Well, I will tell you that a lot of this began with a directive that the Obama administration sent out to colleges and universities across the country, which essentially required colleges and universities to establish these kangaroo courts in the event that there was any allegation of sexual assault where the accused would have no rights, no due process rights, and they could be expelled without ever being given an opportunity to defend themselves, notice of what the charges were against them, and that sort of thing. And 2 weeks ago, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the University of Michigan could not expel a student on this basis without giving him due process rights. And I think that's really important because we can't get into a situation in this country. We have always prided ourselves on the due process of law afforded to anyone accused of criminal misconduct. And in this case, I don't even think that these things rise to the level of criminal misconduct. But certainly the whole notion, this feminist notion that just because a woman makes an accusation, she must be believed, that's just can't be our practice, and we can't allow this to continue. This is a nightmare scenario that these left-wing activists have put our confirmation process into because they cannot find a credible reason to oppose Judge Kavanaugh on the merits. And so they're trying to intimidate 3 or 4 Republican members of the Senate. I hope that those senators will not fall for this horrible misconduct in which the left-wing organizations, lawyers, the media, and these Democratic senators are engaged in.
Last question for you, Cleta. Law is a profession dominated by men, less so now, but certainly for many years it was. Yet you, of course, have found success there, and I don't know how difficult that road was for you, but as you consider your own success and the success of many other professional women, what do you make of the narrative we're seeing with this story? Not just that there's a problem with Brett Kavanaugh, but that men in general are the problem.
Well, look, that was the Betty Friedan, Gloria Steinem argument in the 60s and 70s. And I actually think it's unfortunate that you still have these people practicing and trying to force this feminist ideology off on the country. It's bad enough that they would come forward with these allegations about Brett Kavanaugh. But frankly, if this is allowed to stand and they can just make whatever allegations they want to wreck someone's career, they can do that to any man in any business or any office, any company, any organization anywhere in the country. I just don't think that's allowing mob rule. And I think that we in America have always prided ourselves, as I said earlier, on the rule of law and guaranteeing due process. And I think we ought to apply that in this basic standards of fairness. We ought to apply that here. And we need to be very leery of any situation where we allow some unfounded allegation to stampede people into criticizing or firing or terminating or blocking somebody without any shred of evidence. I think that's we better be very careful that we don't allow our country to get in that situation. That reminds me of the former Soviet Union and totalitarianism. I don't think we want to go there.
Cleta, our time is up. Thank you so much for your time today. We greatly appreciate it.
All right, thanks. I'd like to talk to you, Greg.
Same here. Thank you, Cleta. Cleta Mitchell is a Washington-based attorney and a partner in the firm of Foley and Lardner. I'm Greg Columbus, reporting for Radio America.